2020 has been a mad year. So much has happened, and not all of it's been great. But in the photography and video industry, we've actually had an incredible year in terms of releases. And this is our year in review for cameras. In this video, we want to help you guys navigate some of the amazing releases that have happened this year. Now, we can't cover everything, but we're going to go through a load of the cameras that we got to try out and test. And actually, all of the cameras that we're talking about, if you want to find out more, we're going to put links in the description because we've done videos on pretty much everything. Now, I'm joined today by George and by Sean, who are going to help me go through all of these amazing releases. So let's start way back in January with the release of the incredible Canon EOS 1DX Mark III. It's a beast of a camera that is really for sports, wildlife and press photographers. Really high end, incredible image quality, amazing AF and very, very tough. Isn't it, George?
Yeah, I mean, it was all in the name of testing. It is all in the name of testing.
That's one way of putting it.
That's the way
I mean, it survived. We were lucky that we got the 1DX Mark III before lockdown started. We were able to actually go out and do some really nice tests with it. We could do a shutter test. We were able to go out with Ellie Rothney, an incredible wildlife photographer, and shoot with her. And we also met up with Eddie Keogh, and we haven't actually released that video yet. Eddie's a sports photographer, and we went to a football game and did some shooting there. We're going to release that in the new year when things calm down a little bit. But the 1DX Mark III, if you're looking for something tough to last you 5 years and to keep up with incredibly professional usage for both stills and actually a little bit of video as well, George, right? It was really nice to shoot with video as well.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to take it out, and I only had it for a couple of hours, but I just wandered around London where I live and just got some really, really cool shots. And it was actually one of the cool things about that test shoot was that it was really dark outside. So I got to test the camera out in really, really low light situations. And I was shooting it at like 20k ISO, which is like a lot. And I was really, really happy with the image, really happy with those Canon colours, no surprises there. But yeah, it's surprisingly good for a, mainline photography camera to also offer really, really good video.
People will know if the 1DX Mark III is the camera for them. You'll already be in an industry that's using similar photography equipment, but we were really impressed, and it's something we'd love to use again, especially with some, nice long primes, maybe on a big sports or wildlife trip. Canon sorts out. And next up we had February, and we thought things might calm down. They did not. It really started to speed up, to be honest. We hit the ground running with Fuji. It was a very busy month for them. We had the X100 V. Anybody who knows the X100 series knows what to expect from this. It's a carry with you all the time camera, incredibly vintage looks, very beautiful, pretty camera. Fixed lens, which is what the X100 series is. It's a fixed lens camera. Really takes you back to figuring out how to compose things and really just get in the mood for actually finding a shot rather than being worried about, the perfect swapping lenses all the time. It can make you not see the shots that are actually there. And it just takes that confusion away from it. And I really like the X100V for that. We didn't have the best weather to shoot with it, did we, George? But it was a bit cloudy, it was a bit miserable.
I mean, it's February.
But it was February, exactly, yeah. So we were lucky it wasn't tipping it down, to be honest. Which brings us to the XT4.
Where XT4
also. Yes, it did. It came out in February, and it was our first big trip all together, wasn't it? And my God, the weather was awful. Sean really enjoyed it, though. He loves the rain.
This is a hybrid camera for stills and video. So for someone who just wants to pick it up, get some nice video with some nice audio, this is one to do.
Thank God for that weather sealing though, because it took a lot. It was absolutely savage out there. It got savaged by rain. And it held up for the entire duration of the 2 days that we took it out to the New Forest. So
it did.
That highly impressive piece of kit, 240 FPS at 1080p. I mean, that alone is already a selling point for me. Love a bit of slow-mo. But also, having recorded on it, it does 4K 10-bit as well. So you've got all that flexibility, and you've got F-Log, which I'd never used before. But when I brought it into the edit and started editing it, I was highly impressed by it. I thought it was lovely.
Yeah, it's lovely Fuji colours. For me, one of the biggest things was a real stills to video switch. Instead of just a switch that put you in video mode, it actually gave you, a video menu or a stills menu. It copied over your settings. So if you are a true hybrid shooter, you aren't sitting there going, oh, the picture profile, oh God, I'm in this setting. You don't need to worry about any of that. It's just swapping you to and fro. So I really, really like that from a sort of more hybrid shooters point of view. XT4 was, I think, a winner for all three of us. But we did get some better weather end of February, and that's when we had the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark III. Sean, you and I were lucky enough to get some sunshine. We took that out. Nice compact size, beefy, but compact, and actually quite compact lenses. From a stills point of view, I love the capability of taking a few shots before you actually press the shutter. There is a mode to do that, which was brilliant. And I actually got a seagull taking off, because I think if you're going to miss something, a bird taking off actually happens quite a lot. The amount of times you wait for it and you miss it. Whereas with this, you start clicking after the bird has taken off, and it records the shots from beforehand. Really impressed with that. We were also very lucky, Sean, about the lady who got attacked by seagulls. We got some lovely continuous shots with that EM1 Mark III. But also for both of us, the image stabilization was special. That had crazy image stabilization. And for stills, it meant I could get some lovely long exposures, handheld, without the need of a tripod. And for Sean, the video.
The image stabilization on that Olympus camera was outstanding. I'd never felt anything like it before, because it's 7 stops of image stabilization, which is just brilliant. I took some shots basically just of some of the wildlife there. We had geese, we had pigeons, and when I was tracking along with them, it was just so smooth. It was like it was on a gimbal, and it was all handheld as well. So, and also with the slow motion capabilities that it had, I got this epic shot of a pigeon. I must say, I'm so proud of that shot. It stays with me every day.
You can't see it in Sean's frame, but he's actually just got a massive TV in his room that just plays that shot over and over again.
Yeah, just up there, just to remind me why I do what I do.
So after February, we then hit lockdown. The first lockdown in the UK. And March was quiet, but come April, we had the Canon C300 Mark III release. I mean, I'm not going to go too much into this, because obviously most people who are going to buy this camera already know what they're looking for, right? It's the sort of camera they know about. But I think if you're an independent filmmaker, you've got a little bit of budget, you're taking it pretty seriously, and maybe you're a DOP or you do a lot of kind of high-end stuff, this is probably a great camera for you.
Absolutely.
I loved using it. We were lucky. We got some really nice light. Had some nice wildlife and
so
things
jealous
like that.
of that. Yeah.
It was a nice morning, to be fair, that I had that camera. It's good. The other thing I'd say is, if you're in corporate, obviously you already know if your productions are using this, and I think people are surprised sometimes, because obviously C300, it's talked about so much and reviewed so much that I think people don't realise how sort of high end it is used. Like it's a proper broadcast camera for those of us who aren't in that world. And
because the C300's been out for so long as well, it's familiar to people who are just upgrading from, say, the Mark 1 or the Mark 2.
It's got that EF mount, so you can mount all, that insanely huge range of Canon lenses on it as well. Makes it really flexible.
Definitely. We then moved into vlog months, where we had May and June. We had a couple of vlogging cameras come out there. In May we had the Sony ZV-1, which was a really, really nice little compact vlogging camera. I think for someone who just wants something to carry around with them all the time, it was really good. I was super impressed with, there was a mode where you could literally click a button and it would basically go into product mode. So if you had something, say this battery, and you put it up to the camera, it would immediately realise what you were doing. It would focus on that battery straight away. And I think for a lot of vloggers out there, YouTubers, that's probably a really nice feature. Pretty impressed with that. And then we had the G100 from Panasonic. Now, they're different types of cameras for sure, but they both worked so well for vlogging in different ways. So I would say if you're looking at a vlogging camera this year, coming up to Christmas time, you're trying to think of which one to go for, watch both those videos and sort of compare them, because there's probably some interesting stuff in there for depending on the type of vlogger that you are, for what you would actually like. And then we moved into sort of more of a flagship region. July was the month I think we all found the most exciting, right?
Massively.
Yeah.
So we had the Canon major release, which had a load of lenses, as well as the EOS R5 and the EOS R6. Incredibly amazing cameras. I'm going to go over these quickly because I've done so much with the R5 already. The R6 haven't done so much with. We've struggled to get our hands on it, right? It's been quite difficult to get hold of. But I have had a little play over the last couple of days, actually, just so I could get some stills in this video for you guys. And it's much lighter than the R5. If you're coming from a DSLR, I would say it's almost more what you're used to if you're coming from like a Canon DSLR. Obviously that smaller megapixel count makes the files a lot more workable for stills and video. It's 2 SD cards rather than a CF Express in there, so also budget. You have to consider budget, right? But apart from those things, you know, it is a very capable camera, very similar to the R5 in a lot of ways. The R5, of course, incredible piece of engineering, especially with the firmware update, of course, if you take away that controversial start, and now you've got the firmware update. But what a camera. I think, George, both you and I weren't too keen in the first few hours we had our hands on it.
Took a little bit to get used to, yeah.
And it does, yeah. And then it just absolutely clicked. And actually,
For sure.
things were in the right place. Things were where they should be on other cameras. And cameras are so standardized now that I got used to never having to search for anything anymore, I think. Not necessarily in the menu systems, but with my hands. And then as soon as I'd used this for a few hours, I suddenly thought, this is better. Like, this is how they should be. This makes more sense. Of course, that's a personal thing, but I think both George, you and I felt that. The autofocus on the R5, I think, was killer. You know, there's been many times I've spoken about the autofocus recently. Actually, this video, I won't have done anything by the time this video comes out, but recently did a portrait shoot with the new RF 85mm, of which I've shown George and Sean a couple of the images, and that actually was probably the most impressed I've been with the camera or the RF mount, because the images from that were just stunning. It was incredibly capable, autofocus, low light capabilities, just sheer image quality. So yeah, the R5 was an absolute winner, and especially for photographers. Incredible video as well though, George, right?
Oh, really, really good. I mean, I'll just start off 8K video. That's so cool. I'm not familiar with using 8K cameras. I can't imagine that most people are. Nobody's outputting their video in 8K, but it gives you so much flexibility. If you're shooting in low light, you make that noise smaller by downscaling it. Or, you know, just gives you so much flexibility to crop in, especially if you're delivering your video in 1080p. But then you've got tons of other stuff that's also super cool. The autofocus I was really impressed with. I was shooting wildlife, 200mm a lot of the time, and it was bang on every time. Didn't cause me really any issues at all. And you've got 4K 100p, which is so cool. The only thing I would like to point out is you do need to be aware of the bit rates that are coming out of this camera, because some of the bit rates for 8K, I think it's like 1300 megabits a second, which is ridiculous. So amazing. I filled up cards really, really, really quickly. So again, that was just a little learning curve for me, similar with the body. It just took a little bit of getting used to. But I would just like to mention that. But yeah, otherwise, all around, just an outstanding camera. Really, really enjoyed using it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at whether to go for one of these cameras or not, take that into account, right? Depending on your home setup, whether it's video or stills, I would say the R5 is definitely more pushed towards stills as a stills photographer. Yeah. I think if you're shooting weddings, commercial, fashion, R5 is really going to do good for you, and landscape as well. But literally, it's so versatile. Anything. It can do 20 frames per second. It's not a problem. What I would say is think about what you're actually using at home to edit this stuff, because they are big files, especially if you're doing video, you know, and that's where the R6 really... you might decide actually the R6 is more for you, or you might also decide, you know, RF lenses, stunning optics, which we will sort in another video, you know, we'll go through some of those, but they are, you know, when you look at the prices, RF lenses aren't the cheapest, so maybe you want to, you know, spend on an R6 and get some nicer, you know, RF lenses, or maybe you're lucky enough to have the budget for, you know, RF lenses and your R5, or maybe you've already got a bunch of EF lenses. Can't speak highly enough about the adapter. The adapter is absolutely great. So if you've already got EF lenses and you're worried about those going on to an R5, I've got to say, I don't think that's a problem. Normally, actually, I disagree. I would say adapters aren't great, but in this case the adapter was fantastic. So I would say if you've got EF lenses and you're worried about that with getting an R5, that shouldn't be the thing that turns you off of it, for sure. So alongside the R5 and R6, there was another big flagship model that came out in July, and I'm pretty sure George is chomping at the bit to tell you about that one.
In July came the Sony A7S III, which is a really long-awaited camera, certainly by myself and by a huge amount of the filmmaking community. And it came with a bang. There was a lot of stuff that Sony were a little late to the game on. We wanted to see 10-bit, we wanted to see 4K slow-mo, we wanted to see probably improvements in color science, and they just gave us, they certainly gave me exactly what I wanted and more. So nice to be able to use, have S-Log2 and S-Log3, both really lovely picture profiles in 10-bit. Don't have to worry too much about making sure your exposure is perfect because you retain that control. And then just 4K 100p slow-mo, it looks beautiful, it felt beautiful, it was so fun to shoot on. And then the autofocus, Sean, tell me about the autofocus.
Well, I mean, there's that shot that I got of you, George, where you were modelling for me, and I was just walking around him, and I was on kind of like a pebbly footpath in this forest, and as I was walking around him, it was just to test the autofocus, and I was going from the back of his head all the way to right up in front of him to see if it would retain focus, and it was seamless. I don't think a focus puller, professional specialist focus puller, could have done it any better. It was flawless. No. And on top of that particular shot as well, the IBIS is pretty good, but that shot, because of the footpath, was a little bit shaky. So I just slapped a warp stabilizer on it, and then it transformed it into one of the best shots that I've probably ever done. It was literally flying around him, like so cool. Smooth, really impressive.
Shot. And that image stabilization as well allowed you to get that incredible beetle shot that almost looked like a David Attenborough shot, and that was straight out of camera. There was no warp stabilizer on that, was there?
Absolutely. I had like a 35mm focal length on that shot, and I was literally just hand holding the A7S III just alongside these beetles. One of them was like piggybacking on the other one. It was like a slider shot. I was really happy with it. Really fun to play with that camera.
I think that's the perfect point, Sean. It is just a really, really fun camera to play with. You can take it on your corporate shoots, and it's got those incredible specs so that you can just deliver really, really high quality professional video. But at the same time, it's just fun to use. You can take it out on your weekends and go shoot a music video or go shoot something a bit weirder, a bit more creative. And because of that tiny body and that portability, I feel like it ticks so many of the boxes that I really, really am looking for a camera to tick.
Yeah, and if you want to see more from any of the stuff we spoke about so far, like I said at the start of the video, we've got loads of videos on all of this stuff, so check out the links in the description. We did a lot with the A7S III. There's probably some more to come as well. And again, with the R5, there will be some more stuff to come with the R6, so make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss that. So once we had those massive cameras out the way, there's nothing else for the rest of the year, right? So very wrong. We hit September and it was just as busy as ever. Canon hit us with a brand new Cine camera in their Cine lineup, and it was the EOS C70. Now, Sean, you were lucky enough to get your hands on this one more than either of us two. What did you think?
I loved it. I was really lucky to have that for the week that I did. First of all, it's a smaller form factor, so the smallest cinema camera that Canon have actually released. And it offers a lot of features similar to what you would expect from the C300. Now, the C70 was basically pushed forward as basically the replacement or the successor to the C100 line. The C100s, they didn't offer 10-bit, only 8-bit, and they didn't shoot in 4K. But the C70 did all that. But it also offered you slow motion, and it also offered the same sensor as in the C300 Mark III, which was the dual gain output sensor, which helps for basically low light shooting and just like reducing any noise levels that you might typically expect from certain shooting situations. So a very, very impressive camera. Ergonomically similar to, I would say, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, for anyone who's familiar with that.
So great if you're coming from a DSLR or mirrorless camera. And I think as well, if you're looking at the C300 Mark III videos and thinking, I want that, but I can't warrant that, this is probably a good place for you to go, the C70, because you get a lot of what the C300 offers, but you get it for a lot less monies. So it's a really good place to be, to maybe enter that cine lineup and maybe start sort of pushing your career forward more. If you're doing some DOP stuff or some more high-end video that you can't quite warrant, just taking maybe a smaller mirrorless camera that you've got already. So it's a nice one, the C70. And we also had something a little bit more odd come in that month, which was, I wasn't expecting it, to be honest, from Sony, which was the smallest, I think the world's smallest full frame mirrorless camera, which was That's the cool. A7C.
Yeah.
It was a weird one. I wasn't sure what to make of it when it first appeared, but actually it was quite cool. It's basically an A7 III, but in an A6600 type body. Like it's mini, perfect for if you're traveling, eventually when we can actually travel. We're shooting this during the second lockdown, by the way, hence us all being clearly in our own rooms. We did have a lovely studio planned.
This is my own studio. This is my professional studio setup.
Yeah, George always puts his own posters up in his professional studios.
Make it homely.
Make it homely. But yeah, so we sort of got this A7C. We only got it for a couple of hours. But actually it was lovely. As you'd expect, the quality was what you'd expect from a Sony full frame camera. It had loads of features, manual design ergonomically. I think some people will like it, some people won't. It's just one of those type of cameras because it is quite small. I didn't dislike it. I would probably personally go for something with a little bit more grip on it, but I think, like, I've got a couple of friends who walk in the Highlands a lot. They live up in Scotland and they just walk the mountains all the time, and they're always saying they wish they had something that was really high quality, so it was worth taking with them other than their phones, but it kept the weight down in their bags. And this is a perfect camera for that, I have to say. And actually, Sean, one of your friends, had a similar, not the same, but a similar type use, didn't they?
Well, basically, a friend of mine who is a professional drone pilot, and he has like the full range of drones that you would need for any sort of corporate commercial shooting sort of situation. And he basically got in touch with me on the basically asking if the A7C had gyro stabilization, which it does, which is basically a stabilization metadata that you can apply in post-production that's in the footage that you record. And basically, because of the size of the A7C and the weight of it, and because it can come with a kit lens that's relatively quite small and light as well. So what he was interested in is basically applying that to one of his smaller drone models, really high speed drone as well. I think it's called FPV drone. And to mount it on one of those and just basically send a full frame camera off to do aerial shots. I think we're going to cover a piece of content like that next year, which will be really exciting to really test if that is like workable for some people. But a great idea from him. Now.
Yeah, a great idea. So many. I mean, like, if anyone's watched Top Gear this series, half of their stuff was just drone shots, very fast-paced drone shots, and I think it's nice to incorporate that into a lot of footage now. I know you need to get the license, but it's not that hard to do the exam and get the license and things. So I think it's something that people should think about more. And I think the A7C, it's a bit niche, but I think for the niches that it sits in, it's actually a really fantastic camera from Sony. Coming out of September, we also had something incredibly exciting for all three of us. I think we were all into this. It wasn't so much of a flagship model that we'd seen, the rest of the year, like the A7S III and the R5, but it was a very exciting model, and I think a bit more versatile, if anything, and that was the Panasonic LUMIX S5. That camera was a really interesting one. It was definitely focused more towards video in terms of its marketing, but not its specs. There was no reason for it to be pushed so harshly towards video. I think it's purely because, Panasonic do have a good hold in the video market, so I think they pushed it that way. But whether you're stills or video, the S5 was fantastic. I know, Sean, you got to play with the S5 quite a bit.
Yeah, I took it around and shot some pretty nice stuff with it. The IBIS on it is incredible. Similar sort of IBIS to what you expect of the GH5. And it's also full frame, whereas the GH5 is obviously like micro four thirds. And that's something that a lot of people online, when it was kind of released and people knew what they were looking at, compared it to. They basically would say that it was a full frame GH5. So it would shoot 10-bit 422 4K. It had a slow motion mode. It had an S&Q switch on the top, so that was really easy to access. Vlog inbuilt. Straight out of the box. You didn't have to like you did with the GH5, where you buy the GH5 and then straight out of the box you don't have Vlog and then you need to pay for an upgrade. Well, not with the S5. Like, all of those creative features are just there, ready for you to use from day one.
And I think by the time this video comes out as well, we're shooting this just at the start of November, but by the time we release this to you guys, I think the new firmware will actually be out for the S5 as well, which actually allows it to do 5.97K
external. Wow,
that's cool.
So basically 6K
external
as well. I haven't got all the information to hand, but I think that's going to be around sort of end of November. So yeah, that's a pretty exciting upgrade as well to the S5. In terms of stills, everything you'd expect from a Panasonic, great quality stills, feature packed. You know, time lapses and intervalometers and 6K photo and all the other things you'd expect from a Panasonic. It's really, really nice to use. And as Sean said, it's little. You know, for a full frame with that big mount they've got on there, it's a really nice, small, well-built camera. And Panasonic have this rubberiness to them that just makes you feel like you're not going to drop it. The day I took it out, I'll see if I can find some footage, and if I can, I'll put it here. Oh my God, the rain, it's the wettest I've ever been whilst not in a shower. It was unbelievable rain. And I had it out, I think I had a 70-200 on it just to take a few shots. And yeah, I mean, it still worked as well afterwards. And I'm not even sure that one's weather sealed. I'll have to check, but it didn't die, so that's something about the toughness of that camera.
That's usually a good thing, isn't it?
Isn't it good? Yeah, when you go out in the rain like that, you don't kill a camera. But then we moved on to October, and that's getting towards the end of my list. The reason I keep looking over here is I've got a list of all the cameras, you know, that we've sort of done some stuff on this year. And as we entered October, we had the Z6 II and the Z7 II. Now, these weren't necessarily massive upgrades like we've seen from some of the other cameras, but the quality was fantastic. We got a very short time to play with the Z7 II. Big thank you to Nikon for that. It's kind of hard to get hold of Nikon cameras usually, and we actually got a chance to take some pre-production images, which was lovely. And we'll definitely be getting those back to do some more for both video, probably with the Z6 II and the Z7 II, some more stills as well. So we'll definitely be getting those back. But yeah, what I used them for, which was just a very quick shoot in some very rubbish light, wasn't it, Sean? Absolutely rubbish light. We had the most stunning morning, and Nikon turned up about 5 minutes after the cloud appeared, which was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was a bummer.
So typical.
It was. So typical. But the autofocus was lovely. There was a bit of a rut going on with some of the stags, but it made for some great images of the deer. The autofocus was great, even with an extender on the 70-200 2x extender. So really impressed with those. Again, design pretty much the same as the original. The bodies are, I think, identical, which isn't a bad thing for me. I think they got the design absolutely bang on with the original Z7 and Z6, and I know a lot of photographers felt that way. I know the Z6 has been incredibly popular with a lot of videographers as well, especially people in wildlife. Actually, I've noticed, you know, obviously Tom Mason and people like that who we work with quite a lot, you know, have spoken very highly of those cameras. So I think it'll be an interesting one to do some more with those. And we've also had the Fujifilm XS10. Now, the reason I've put that at the end of the list here is because, well, one, it only just came out, but two, we haven't had a chance to actually get a video to you guys yet. I've had a quick play with it, done a few images with it, and I'll actually be getting it back in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to put something together that's a little bit more detailed for you guys to have a look at. First impressions though, because I haven't actually had a chance to talk about it, so I will give you a little bit of a rundown. Love the fact that it's now got a mode dial. I'm a massive Fuji fan, have been for years, and I've always used their normal, slightly odd system. And actually, I quite enjoyed the mode dial. I don't think it took Fuji away from the camera at all. I think Fuji is in those colours, in those looks, and I don't think that took away from the camera whatsoever. Fuji is also in those lovely lenses, as Sean we were talking about with the XT4. And And I know you got a chance to use some of the, is it the MKX lenses?
The MKX cine lenses are wicked. Very phenomenal, very versatile.
They were really nice. I got a chance to have a play with those as well. And they're just beautiful, you know, they just have that Fuji like niceness to them.
It's cine glass. I mean, what can you expect?
Yeah, the XS10, I actually really enjoyed it. And actually, I spoke about it so much after I'd had it delivered that 2 of my friends bought them.
Wow.
Just because I was speaking so highly of it. So yeah, really nice camera. We'll definitely be getting that back in. Put a couple of shots here, but want to do some more with that. Now, I'm up to October on my list. We're filming this first few days in November. It's not the end of the year. There is, I'm sure, based on this year, there is more to come. I'm sure it's not over yet.
Yeah, something lurking around the corner, maybe.
I bet there is.
Who knows?
Yeah. What we're saying is you should subscribe to the channel for sure if you don't want to miss anything, and turn on notifications. We'll be doing more videos like this as well, because this has been an insane year for releases. It's unprecedented, but we're going to do more with like some of the lenses that have come out. We've had some fantastic accessories that we've all been testing, some great lighting. Loop Deck have done some amazing things this year. Sean actually has, there we go, the Loop Deck there, and which I think he's a bit in love with. Loop Deck aren't getting that back, I tell you now. But yeah, we've had some great stuff through, and we want to share it with you guys. We want to help you navigate a little bit. We hope this video has helped you with that. I want to sort of round things up now by sort of pulling out some of the things I've noticed this year. One of them being everything is now hybrid. It used to be that here's your photo specs, or here's your video specs, and then here's this little paragraph at the end about either the miniature amount of photography this camera does or the miniature amount of video. It's not like that now. Everything is half and half. Maybe except the X100 V and of course the actual cine cameras.
It seems that manufacturers are really listening to their audiences, their market. I mean, with the social media age that we're now in, it's so easy for obviously customers to be very vocal online about what it is that they're expecting from, say, the Mark II of something or beyond that. So yeah, it's like we can see in the A7S III, they're listening.
It's so cool that that's happening as well, you know, like say like with Canon, you know, like with the R5, we know there was the overheating issues, everybody was talking about it, it was a big deal, and then what happens as a result of that? Canon listen, and they fix the problem for us, and that's so cool, I think, and that is, you know, that's really exciting actually for the camera industry, that it's moving towards that way, and that the consumers feel heard.
Yeah, and it used to take 4 years and then a camera would come out and everyone would still be disappointed, whereas now you can have a lot more feedback. I think we hold manufacturers to a far higher standard than we ever did before.
Like almost every one of these cameras we've mentioned shoots 10-bit, almost every one of them shoots 4K, and almost every one of them is going to be doing at least maybe 12 frames a second in continuous mode. You know, they're hybrid specs, you know, across video and photography, and it's just the line now. That's where it's at, and it's really, really exciting.
The start of a new decade.
I think my piece of advice to you guys out there, not the microphone, to you guys out there would be that if you're looking at a camera now, don't necessarily just buy the best you can afford. Take a look at what you actually need, because I've got a new MacBook Pro, literally bought it at the start of the year, absolutely top spec that was possible. At the time I needed a laptop to travel around with, didn't want to go desktop, but you know, Macs are very creative devices, you know, they do a lot of work with Adobe, and half of these cameras I can't process the video from. It's far too big. You have to proxy everything, and even for stills now, it's very difficult to process some of those bigger files. So what I would say is think about how you're going to be using these cameras, and what you actually need, because you may not need a cine camera. You may actually need your A7S III, or you may not need an A7S III. You may actually need an S5 if you're looking at video. And for stills, you may not need the R5. That might not be where you're at. You may not need 45 megapixels. You know, you may want actually the R6 with a bit more flexibility in terms of how much you can actually store on one of those cards. So that would be my advice. Look at what you actually need rather than just buying the best, because it used to be that if it wasn't the best, it wasn't great, but that's not the case anymore. So now it's my favourite bit of the video, and we're going to end with this. We're all going to let you know our favourite cameras of this year. Now, this isn't the best, this isn't the top specs, it's nothing to do with that. It's just our favourites personally.
It's the big one. Favourite camera of 2020.
So I'm going to start with you, George. What is your favourite camera of 2020?
This is going to come as a massive surprise for the two of you. It's obviously the Sony A7S III for me. I'm a Sony shooter. I love Sony. I had all of these things I wanted them to do for me, and I just felt like they did them all. And it just ticks all the boxes, you know. I feel like it allows me to be more creative. It allows me to not worry so much if I'm getting my exposure perfect. It allows me to not have to constantly micro adjust the focal point all the time because I'm worried that it might be a little bit soft. I could talk for a long time about this, but I won't, because it really won't be that interesting to anybody but me. But I just love it. I just love it.
It's the winner for you.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Sean, and what about you? Your camera of 2020?
Well, if I was to say, like, you know, professionally, like, well, George has already taken the A7S III, so...
Yeah, there's none left for you.
But if I was to say choose a personal camera just for myself, for going out, having fun, shooting the odd kind of, you know, corporate gig or whatever, whether it be an event or something, it would have to be the XT4. Because not only are the specs in it really good, but also it just looks really sexy, especially with that silver finish on top. It looks so vintage, and I love that.
Yeah, it's a great pick for stills and video. For me, my favourite camera of 2020, again, no surprise, is the EOS R5. It absolutely ticks every box for me. The same as George. It's things I've been looking for years that haven't been accessible to me, or I've needed multiple cameras to do the things that I want to do personally. For me, the R5 mixes that all into one, and it's the first time I've had that in a camera for a long, long time. So for me, my winner is the EOS R5. But we'd like to know what your winners are. What are your favourite cameras of 2020? Make sure to pop them in the comments. We'd love to know your thoughts on this year's releases. As we've already said, we're going to be doing way more of this type of content. We're going to get some technical stuff out there and some buying guides for you guys as well. So make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. But for now, a massive thank you for tuning in to this epic rundown of 2020's camera releases.